I felt their eyes on me as I moved around the kitchen, pouring wine into 3 glasses. 20 years had passed since we'd all been together like this, but the way Roy's gaze lingered on my silhouette, the way Vince's smile deepened when I laughed, it was like no time had passed at all. The Arizona sunset painted everything golden through the windows, and I could feel something electric building between us, something that had been waiting decades to surface. Before we dive into this story, take a quick second to hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Now let's get started. The fire crackled in the stone fireplace as I handed them their glasses, my fingers brushing against theirs, just a moment longer than necessary. Roy, at 72, still had those piercing blue eyes that used to make my heart skip in college. Vince, now 70, carried himself with the same quiet confidence that had always drawn people to him. And here I was, 69 and feeling more alive than I had in years. 2 old friends? Roy raised his glass, his voice carrying that familiar warmth that had always made me feel seen. 2 old friends and new adventures, I added, meeting both their gazes with a smile that held more promise than they probably expected. We settled onto the plush couch facing the fire, me in the middle, their warmth radiating from either side. The wine loosened our tongues, and soon we were sharing stories from our younger days, the wild parties, the road trips, the moments of reckless freedom that had defined our 20s. Remember that night in Sedona? Vince asked, his hand resting casually on the back of the couch behind me. When we skinny dipped in that hidden pool, I laughed, feeling heat creep up my neck. I remember you 2 being too chicken to actually go through with it. We were being gentlemen, Roy protested, shifting closer. Though I'll admit, we both regretted it later. The conversation grew bolder with each sip of wine. Old flirtations, resurfaced, half-forgotten attractions bubbled to the surface. I found myself leaning into their attention, reveling in the way they looked at me. Not like a woman approaching 70, but like the vibrant, desirable person I still felt inside. You know what we should do? Roy's eyes sparkled with mischief. Play truth or dare, like we used to. Vince chuckled. Are we really going to act like college kids again? Why not? I set down my wine glass and turned to face them both. I dare you to try and shock me. The challenge hung in the air between us, thick with possibility. Roy went first, choosing truth, admitting he'd always wondered what it would have been like if we'd acted on the chemistry that had always simmered between us. Vince followed, daring me to tell them my wildest fantasy. I felt my cheeks flush, but the wine and their encouraging smiles gave me courage. I've always wondered what it would be like to be completely desired by 2 men who truly know me, I confessed, my voice barely above a whisper. The silence that followed was electric. Roy's hand found mine, his thumb tracing gentle circles across my palm. Vince's fingers brushed against my shoulder, sending shivers down my spine. Dorothy. Roy's voice was husky with something I recognized but hadn't heard in years. What if I told you that fantasy doesn't have to stay a fantasy? My breath caught. Looking into their eyes, I saw the same desire I was feeling reflected back at me. These weren't strangers. These were men who had known me for decades, who had watched me bloom and grow and become the woman I was today. Then I'd say, I whispered, show me. Roy leaned in first, his lips brushing against mine with a tenderness that made my heart race. The kiss was soft, exploratory, filled with 20 years of wondering and waiting. When we parted, Vince was there, his hand cupping my cheek as he drew me toward him. His kiss was different, deeper, more urgent, but equally reverent. Are you sure about this? Vince murmured against my lips. Instead of answering with words, I stood and took their hands, leading them toward the bedroom. My heart hammered against my ribs, not with fear, but with anticipation. This felt right in a way I hadn't expected. The bedroom was bathed in soft lamplight, casting everything in warm golden tones. I turned to face them, suddenly aware of how different my body was from the last time they might have imagined it. But the way they looked at me, with admiration, with hunger, with genuine affection, melted away any self-consciousness. Roy stepped forward first, his hands gentle as they traced the curve of my shoulders. You're even more beautiful than I remembered, he whispered, and I believed him because his touch held no hesitation, no reservation. Vince moved behind me, his breath warm against my neck as his fingers found the zipper of my dress. May I? He asked, and I nodded, trusting them completely. The fabric whispered as it fell away, pooling at my feet. Their hands explored my skin with reverent touches, mapping the changes time had brought while celebrating the woman I was now. Every caress sent warmth spiraling through me, awakening sensations I'd almost forgotten I could feel. Roy's lips found the hollow of my throat while Vince's hands traced the curve of my waist. They moved with practiced coordination, as if they'd been planning this moment for years. Their touch was patient, worshipful, making me feel like a goddess being adored by devoted followers. "Your skin is so soft," Roy murmured, his lips trailing, down to my collarbone. I shivered as Vince's hands smoothed over my back, his fingers tracing patterns that made me arch into their touches. They guided me to the bed with gentle pressure, their own clothes disappearing with efficient movements. When they joined me, skin meeting skin, I felt a completeness I hadn't experienced in decades. This wasn't just physical attraction, it was the culmination of a friendship that had spanned most of our adult lives. Roy's mouth found mine again, while Vince's lips traced a path down my spine, each kiss sending electricity through my entire being. Their hands explored with unhurried thoroughness, reacquainting themselves with curves and valleys, discovering sensitive spots that made me gasp with pleasure. "How do you want this?" Roy asked, his forehead resting against mine, his breath mingling with mine. "However it feels right," I whispered back, and they seemed to understand perfectly. What followed was a dance of give and take, of whispered endearments and shared breaths. They took turns lavishing attention on every inch of my body, their mouths and hands working in harmony to build waves of sensation that crashed over me again and again. Vince's strong hands held me steady as Roy's lips traced patterns across my chest, his touch sending sparks of warmth radiating outward. When they switched positions, Vince's mouth replaced Roy's, his technique different but equally skilled at drawing soft sounds of pleasure from my lips. "You taste like honey," Vince murmured against my skin, his words sending another shiver through me. Roy's hands mapped the contours of my thighs with reverent touches, his fingers finding spots that made me arch and gasp. Their attention was complete, focused, making me feel like the center of their universe. They moved together with an intuitive understanding, one supporting me while the other explored, their touches complementing each other perfectly. When Roy's mouth found my most sensitive places, Vince's hands held me steady, his lips pressing gentle kisses to my throat as waves of sensation built within me. The pleasure was overwhelming in the best possible way. Years of loneliness and self-doubt melted away under their devoted attention. They weren't just touching my body, they were celebrating it, worshiping it, making me feel desired and beautiful in ways I'd almost forgotten were possible. "That's it," Roy encouraged softly as my body began to tremble. "Let go for us." And I did, surrendering completely to the sensations they were creating, my body arching as release washed over me in powerful waves. They held me through it, their touches, gentle and supportive, grounding me as pleasure coursed through every nerve. When the tremors subsided, they didn't stop. Instead, they switched positions again, Vince taking his turn at drawing music from my body while Roy's hands and lips provided harmony. The pattern continued, each taking care to ensure my pleasure while the other supported and caressed. "My turn," I finally whispered, pushing them both back against the pillows with a strength that surprised all three of us. I explored their bodies with the same reverence they'd shown mine, marveling at the way they responded to my touch. Roy's sharp intake of breath when I traced certain patterns with my fingertips, Vince's low sound of approval when my lips found sensitive spots along his neck and chest. Their bodies told stories of decades well-lived, scars from adventures, changes brought by time, but also strength and vitality that spoke to their zest for life. I kissed and caressed them both, taking my time to show them the same worship they'd lavished on me. "Dorothy," Roy breathed as my attention focused on him, his hands tangling in my hair. "You're incredible." Vince's hands roamed my back as I shifted, to give him equal attention, his appreciation evident in every touch and whispered endearment. They were patient with my exploration, letting me set the pace while they supported each other and me with gentle touches and encouraging words. When I finally drew back, we arranged ourselves together on the wide bed, skin touching skin, hearts beating in rhythm. Roy positioned himself carefully, his eyes meeting mine with a question I answered by drawing him closer. "Yes," I whispered, and he joined with me in a movement that felt like coming home. Vince's hands caressed my back and shoulders as Roy and I found our rhythm, his lips pressing gentle kisses to my skin. The sensation of being connected to one while being cherished by the other was indescribable, complete in a way I'd never experienced. Roy moved with careful consideration, each motion designed to bring us both maximum pleasure. His hands held my hips as we rocked together, finding a pace that built sensation slowly, deliciously. "Switch," Vince murmured eventually, and they helped me transition smoothly to him, the change in sensation making me gasp with renewed pleasure. Vince's approach was different, deeper, steadier, his hands holding me close as we moved together. Roy's fingers traced patterns on my back and arms, his lips finding mine in kisses that tasted of wine and possibility. They continued alternating, each bringing their own unique energy to our shared dance. The pleasure built in layers, each switch adding new dimensions to the sensations coursing through me. Their consideration for each other and for me created an atmosphere of complete trust and acceptance. Together, I whispered finally, an idea forming that I wasn't sure I had the courage to voice. But they understood, and with careful coordination and infinite patience, they showed me sensations I'd only dreamed of. The feeling of being completely surrounded by their warmth and attention was overwhelming in the most beautiful way. We moved together in harmony, 3 bodies creating music that seemed to echo through the very walls of the house. Every touch, every kiss, every gentle caress built toward a crescendo that left all 3 of us trembling with shared release. Afterward, we lay tangled together on the rumpled sheets, skin damp with exertion, hearts gradually slowing to normal rhythms. The fire in the living room had burned low, casting shifting shadows through the doorway, but we were warm in our cocoon of shared intimacy. "Well," I said finally, my voice slightly hoarse, "that was unexpected." Roy chuckled, his arm tightening around me. "Good unexpected or bad unexpected?" "Definitely good," I assured him, pressing a kiss to his shoulder before turning to smile at Vince. "Very, very good." Vince's fingers traced lazy patterns on my arm. "We should have done this 20 years ago," he murmured. "We weren't ready 20 years ago," I replied wisely. "We needed time to become who we are now." The morning found us still entwined, sunlight streaming through the windows to illuminate our peaceful faces. We woke slowly, sharing lazy kisses and gentle touches as consciousness returned. There was no awkwardness, no regret, only contentment and a deeper bond than we'd shared before. Over coffee and breakfast, we talked easily, the intimacy we'd shared adding new layers to our friendship rather than complicating it. We were still the same people we'd always been, just with a beautiful secret to carry together. "What happens now?" Roy asked as they prepared to leave later that day. "Now we have something special to remember," I replied, hugging them both tightly. "And who knows, maybe it doesn't have to be just a memory." They drove away with promises to visit again soon, and I stood on my porch watching their car disappear down the dusty Arizona road. The desert stretched endlessly around my little house, but I no longer felt alone in it. That night had reminded me that passion doesn't have an expiration date, that desire can bloom at any age, and that sometimes the best adventures come when you least expect them. My old friends had given me more than just a night to remember. They'd given me back a piece of myself I thought was lost forever. Some people think desire fades with age, but what if the opposite is true? What if experience and trust make intimacy even more powerful? Have you ever been surprised by an old friend in the most wonderful way? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And before you go, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story. Trust me, the next one will leave you just as breathless. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.